You're sitting in your car, engine still running. You just checked your bank account. It says $6,482. Not bad. Better than last year, but not enough to feel safe. Not enough to feel rich. And here's the strange part. Even when that number becomes $20,000 or $80,000 or even $200,000, it still doesn't feel like enough. There's always this quiet thought in the background. I'm close, but not there yet. So what is there? How much money do you actually need to be rich? Not Instagram rich, not looks good from the outside rich, but real, quiet, undeniable financial freedom. Because most people never answer that question properly. They just keep chasing bigger numbers, hoping one day it clicks, but it doesn't. And that's not a motivation problem, it's a definition problem. Let me show you something subtle. If you ask someone earning $50,000 what rich looks like, they'll say $150,000. Ask someone earning $150,000, they'll say $400,000. Ask someone making $400,000, they'll say $1 million. And if you ask someone worth $1 million, they'll say $5 million. The target keeps moving, quietly, predictably, relentlessly, not because the math changed, but because their life did. Their expectations expanded. Their definition adjusted. This is the first hidden mechanism. We think rich is a fixed number, but it's not. It's a moving target tied to lifestyle. And lifestyle has a habit of growing faster than income. Let me give you a simple picture. You get a raise. At first it feels meaningful. You notice the extra money, you feel ahead, then slowly, your life reshapes itself around it. A slightly better apartment, more convenience, better food, subscriptions you don't think about. Nothing extreme, just upgrades. But here's what's actually happening. Every upgrade is increasing your baseline, the minimum amount required just to feel normal. And once something becomes normal, losing it feels like failure. So you don't go backward, you only move forward. That's the trap. Your income grows, but your freedom doesn't. Now let's talk about income for a moment, because this is where most people anchor their idea of wealth. In the US, the median household income is around $80,000. At $150,000, you're doing well. At $250,000, you're in the top 10%. At $500,000, you're in the top 1%. On paper, that sounds like rich. But here's the part that doesn't show up in those numbers. There are people earning $300,000 a year who are still stressed about money, still thinking before spending, still dependent on the next paycheck. Because income is not wealth, it's just cash flow. If it stops, everything stops. And that's the difference most people miss. Let me show you with a story. Two people, same age, same city, same job, both earning $120,000 a year. Person A upgrades everything. Better apartment, better car, more travel, a life that looks impressive. Person B changes almost nothing. Same apartment, same car, same habits, but quietly they invest the difference. Nothing dramatic, just consistent. Month after month, year after year. Fast forward 12 years. Person A looks successful, person B is free, because wealth is not what you show, it's what you don't spend. And more importantly, what you keep long enough for it to grow. This is where the real shift happens. At first, your money grows because of you. You earn it, you save it, you invest it. But eventually, something changes. Your money starts growing on its own. At first, it's small, a few $100s a year, then a few thousand. Then one year, you notice something strange. Your investments grew more than what you added. And that moment is different, because now your effort is no longer the main driver. Math is. Then comes the next shift. Your investments grow more than your salary, and eventually they can replace your income entirely. That is the line. Not $1 million, not a specific salary. That moment, when your money can sustain your life without you, that's what rich actually means. But most people never reach that point, not because they can't, because they unknowingly move the target. Every time they earn more, they increase how much they need, which means the finish line keeps moving further away. Now let's break this down with numbers, because this is where everything becomes clear. There's a simple concept in finance. If you withdraw 4% of your investments each year, your money can last decades. So reverse that. If you need $40,000 a year, you need about $1 million. If you need $60,000, you need $1.5 million. If you need $100,000, you need $2.5 million. Well, that's the real equation, not based on status, not based on comparison, just math. And here's the part that changes how you think. That number depends entirely on your lifestyle. Two people, same income, different spending. One spends $50,000 a year, the other spends $120,000. One needs $1.25 million, the other needs $3 million. Same job, same salary, completely different definition of rich. And this is why most people feel stuck. They think they need to earn more, when what they actually need is to need less. But that's not how the system around you works. Everything pushes you to upgrade, to expand, to normalize more expensive versions of life. Because a higher lifestyle feels like progress. But financially, it's distance from freedom. And the hardest part is, it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels deserved, reasonable, even necessary. Until one day, you realize something uncomfortable. You've built a life that requires your full participation. Just to maintain. You can't step back. You can't slow down. You can't say no. Because everything depends on your income. And that's when people start asking the question, how much is enough? Not out of curiosity, but out of pressure. And that's where the real conversation begins. And that's where things start to shift. Because once you seriously ask that question, how much is enough? You're no longer chasing status. You're looking for an exit. Now here's where most people make a second mistake. They assume enough is a feeling, something they'll recognize when they get there. But it's not. It's a calculation. And if you don't define it clearly, your brain will keep moving it forever. There's a concept most people never think about. Your financial burn rate. It's simply how much your life costs per year. Housing, food, transport, subscriptions, everything. Not what you could spend, what you must spend to maintain your current life, because that number controls everything. If your burn rate is $50,000 a year, you need one number. If it's $120,000, you need a completely different life to support it. And most people don't realize they've been increasing that number for years. Quietly, automatically, a slightly bigger home, a slightly better car, a few more recurring expenses. Each one feels small, but together they raise the floor. The minimum you need just to exist. And once that floor rises high enough, you lose flexibility. You can't take risks. You can't step back. You can't breathe. Because your life now demands a certain level of income. Every single month. This is why two people earning the same can live completely different financial realities. One has a burn rate of $5,000 a month. The other, $12,000. Same income, different pressure, different freedom, different future. Now think about this. If you had $100,000 saved and your burn rate is $5,000 a month, you have 20 months of runway. If your burn rate is $12,000, you have just over 8 months. Same savings, completely different safety. That's the real game, not how much you make, but how long you can last without making it. Because that determines your options, your ability to walk away, to negotiate, to choose. And this is where rich becomes clear. Rich is not about what you can buy, it's about what you can ignore. Bills that don't matter, prices you don't check, decisions that aren't constrained, but more importantly, it's about what you're not forced to do. You're not forced to stay, not forced to tolerate, not forced to continue. That's the real power. Now here's something that might surprise you. The difference between someone worth $2 million and someone worth $10 million is not as visible as you think. Yes, the house might be bigger, the vacations might be better, but their day-to-day life, surprisingly similar. Because once your basic lifestyle is covered, more money doesn't change your daily experience dramatically. It changes your margin, your buffer, your margin for error. But the real shift already happened earlier, at the point where your money started covering your life. Everything after that is just scale. And this is where people get trapped again. They overshoot, they reach the point of independence, but they don't recognize it. So they keep going. Another year, another milestone, another goal. Not because they need it, but because stopping feels unclear. Work is structured, predictable, familiar. Freedom is not. And the human brain prefers certainty over freedom. So it delays. Just one more year. That phrase has cost people years of their life. Not because the math required it, because the mind did. So let's bring this back. How much money do you actually need to be rich? It's not a universal number. It's a personal equation. Your annual expenses multiplied by 25. That's your baseline. But there's a deeper layer, because reducing your expenses doesn't just make life cheaper. It makes freedom closer. Every $1,000 you remove from your yearly spending reduces your rich number by $25,000. Think about that. Cutting a $300 monthly expense doesn't just save you $3,600 a year, it reduces your required wealth by $90,000. One decision can move your finish line by years. And this is where the smartest people focus, not just on earning more, but on needing less. Not in a restrictive way, in an intentional way. They spend on what matters, cut what doesn't, and protect the gap. Because that gap between what you earn and what you need is where wealth is built. Not in income, not in status, in that gap. And over time, that gap compounds. It turns into assets. Those assets turn into income. And that income turns into independence. So instead of asking, how can I look rich? Or even, how can I earn more? The better question becomes, how can I increase the distance between my life and my dependence on income? Because that distance is freedom. And once you feel even a small amount of it, your priorities change. You stop optimizing for appearances. You stop chasing arbitrary numbers. And you start building something quieter, stronger, more durable. A life that doesn't require constant effort just to sustain. And in the end, that's what being rich actually is. Not a lifestyle, not a label, just this. The ability to wake up and know your time is finally yours.